Hello students, today we're looking at the review for our test on solving equations by factoring. So the first question isn't really an equation, it's just a reminder on how to square a binomial. Remember that you have to rewrite it as a pair of binomials and do FOIL to work it out. And just remember that this is going to come up in many of the questions. So the answer here is going to be negative 12x cubed after you do the FOIL. Our second question is the application example where you have to find the sides of a right triangle given a couple of clues, and we're going to be using the Pythagorean theorem. Keywords to notice in here is that it says hypotenuse. Generally, that's the clue that you would use. We don't know the lengths of the sides, so we're told one of the sides is x, one side is 3 less than the hypotenuse, and BC is equal to 9. So I wrote down some steps that I think you should be following in every one of these questions. First of all, if there is a diagram, make sure to label it and set up whatever the equation might be. And this also applies for the questions with rectangles. Do the calculations that are necessary. Remember, you can't start doing any of the factoring until you expand and put everything on the same side equal to 0. And then once you have that, simplify it as much as you can, factor. In this case, it's a linear example, so after you factor, there's only one solution. That's the answer to the bracket, that x must be positive 15. And be careful, remember about taking out a negative from both of the terms when you divide that out to get the sign change inside. And then finally, once you have the value of x, still label your diagram, make sure you put those new values in there, and then answer the question. In this case, he was asking for the area of the triangle, so you have to know base times height divided by 2 for the area of the triangle. Moving on to question 3. Now, this is one of those questions, it's a comparison between two of the shapes. In this case, it's a square and a rectangle. You are required to make the diagram. If I say that in the question, that's going to be part of the mark. So your diagram, try to make the square look like a square. And since it says that the rectangle is 20 centimeters less, okay, the width is 20 centimeters less and the length is 30 centimeters more, that's where we're going to get those two definitions for the sides of the rectangle. But then they're supposed to be equal, right? It says they're equivalent. So you set up the area of the square and the area of the rectangle. Just like before, you can't start doing any factoring or anything like that until you bring everything to the same side. In this case, I brought it over to the right-hand side. The x squared terms disappeared, but I can still solve it by factoring the GCF 10 out of there. And I find out that the solution to that bracket is x is equal to 60. Now that you know the values, you can actually put them into the diagram. X is equal to 60, x is equal to 60, and the length and width of this thing are going to be 60 minus 20, which is equal to 40, and 60 plus 30, which makes it equal to 90. And you can check that the two areas are in fact equal, both equal to 3,600. It asked you the numerical values for the sides of the square. So they're both going to be the same. Both of them are x equals the 60, and the unit here is centimeters. Moving ahead, number 4. Now this is just testing your factoring skills, but remember, first you have to bring everything to the same side, and it's got to be equal to 0. Make sure you know all the different types of factoring. Remember, if you get stuck on something, move on, try go back to it later. So let's see how quickly you guys can do these questions. This question is already equal to 0, so I just need to factor this simple trinomial. Factors of 18 that add to give 9 are 6 and 3. They're both going to be the same sign, and so my values are x is equal to 6 and x is equal to 3. Question E. I'm going to go across the top here. It'll fit better with the screen. I don't have everything on the same side, so I'm going to have to bring that 3k. The 2k squared term is already positive, so I'm going to leave it on the left-hand side. It's going to be positive 3k when I bring it over that equals, right? Everything is going to be opposite when I bring it over. And remember, you're going to keep things in the order that you are used to, right? The squared term, and then just the k term, and then the constant. This is a complex trinomial. Hopefully you remember how to get this done without too much difficulty. For those of you who are able to do this just by thinking about it, k and 2k, they're going to add to give, to give negative 14. I made a mistake there. They're going to have to subtract to give 3. And so 7 and 2 are probably the numbers I'm going to be using. I'll put the 2 here and the 7 there because the inside multiplication is 4k. The outside multiplication is 7k. And they're going to subtract to give a positive 3. The 7 is going to have to be the positive. The 4 is going to have to be the negative, which means it's the negative on that first bracket, and the positive goes on that second bracket. So you want to do this check. I'm erasing it now because I want to have room to write my answers. K is equal to 2, which shouldn't be a problem. When we have a coefficient on the letter and you're solving for the bracket, remember that you have to put the opposite of the constant, so that's the negative 7, over the coefficient, the number that's stuck to the letter, 2. All right, letter B is a difference of 2 squares. You should be recognizing that pretty quickly. And so it's going to be plus 8 and minus 8. So your answers are t is equal to negative 8 or t is equal to 8. The next question, looking pretty ugly, but remember we have to bring everything to the same side. And the x squared term is already positive. So it's going to be plus 36x and minus 8x. On a test, don't skip this step, all right? I'm going to do it just for lack of space. And so that's going to give me 28x plus 49. And at this point, you really wish that there was going to be a GCF, but in fact, there isn't. So here's where we go. 1 and 3, factors of 3. 1 and 49, 7 and 7, 49 and 1 for the backwards, and they have to add to give 28. Well, 3 times 7, okay, is 21, and 1 times 7 is 7. So your first bracket is going to be 1 and 7. Second bracket is going to be 3 and 7. And it's going to be x, and they're both going to be pluses. X is equal to negative 7, or x is equal to negative 7 over 3. Don't forget the negative. The next question is another grouping question where you're going to be coming up with it. I'm just going to jump to the solution here because I want to speed things up a little bit. So I'm going to have 5n and 7n. I'm just guessing here, I'm hoping it's going to be right. And that's going to be 3 times 5 is 15, and 1 times 7, which is 7, equals 22. They're both going to be positive. N is equal to negative 1 over 5, or n is equal to negative 3 over 7. Question G. Expand before you start moving things around. So this is going to be 4x squared and negative 4x. I'm going to bring everything to the side where the 2x squared term is positive. And just as before, I'm going to skip the step because I want to make sure I have enough space for this. 2x squared and 4x squared is going to give me the 6x squared. The negative 4x is going to combine with the negative 30x. And the 20 is going to come over. Now there is a GCF here, which is going to make the factoring a little bit easier. And you're looking for factors of 3 and 10 that are going to subtract to give 17. Now I'm looking at this thinking, it may not even factor. The magic number idea says 30, factors of 30 that are going to subtract to give 17, and I'm not seeing a solution, so I'm going to pause. So after taking a look at the magic number 30, which is the product of 3 and 10, and all of the factors of 30, I see that there is no pair of factors that's going to subtract to give me a 17. So at this point, I got to say it does not factor. Don't worry, that won't happen on the test. Everything will factor, so hopefully you'll see what the issues are. Oops, got some mess here. Let me clear that up. So question D, I can treat this as an expanding question and then bring it all to one side and factor. It's already on one side. Or I can treat it as a difference of 2 squares, which I want to really do this because I think you guys need to see this a couple more times before you get the hang of it. I see the perfect square 100, which is going to factor as 10 and 10, and the perfect square x plus 6 squared, which is going to factor as x plus 6, or at least square root as x plus 6. And there's a plus in front of the first bracket and a minus in front of the next one, so that when I take it apart, I'm going to get 10 plus x plus 6, and in the second bracket, I'm going to get 10 minus x minus 6, which is equal to 0. Don't forget to put that negative into both of the terms. The first bracket simplifies to be x plus 16. The second bracket is going to simplify to become negative x plus 4. Solutions, x is equal to negative 16, which should be obvious. Be a little bit more careful with the second one, though. This says that x is going to be equal to negative 4, right? Because the opposite of the negative 4 over the negative 1. It's going to be positive 4. So fix that, x equals negative 16 or x equals positive 4. All right, the next question, I'm going to FOIL it out or distribute. On the left side, I'm distributing, and on the right side, it's going to be FOIL, 2p squared minus 18p, minus 9p minus 6p plus 27. On the left side, right side, I'm going to see that I got a 2p squared on this side. So 4p squared is bigger, so I'm going to bring it to the left. So it's going to be 4p minus 2p. Then I've got the negative 12p and the negative 15p here, which when the negative 15 joins with the negative 15 becomes a positive 15 on the other side, connects with the 12 to become 3p. And then the positive 27 is going to come over as negative 27. I'm going to factor this with 1p and 2p. And the factors of 27 are going to be 9 and 3 probably, and they have to subtract to give 3. So I think if this is going to be 9 and this is going to be 3, that'll give me the 6p here and the 9p there. The factors have to be, the numbers have to be different. So it's going to be a negative 6 and a positive 9. Positive goes on the second bracket, negative goes on the first bracket. And now I find the values, p is equal to 3 or p is equal to negative 9 over 2. And don't forget to write the equals 0 on all of those steps. All right, the rational expressions, I did a couple of these already. You can take a good look at these now. You can pause to see how these guys get worked out. And let's see if I have time to get this finished in the video. When there's nothing to factor, right, these are all monomial factors. So you're just going to have a lot of cancellations to do. So the 6 can divide by 2, same with the 10. The 4 can divide by 2, and so can the 10. You have a whole bunch of n's going on here. I got 2 n's multiplied on top and 4 n's multiplied on the bottom. So I'm going to get rid of this n and that n with 2 of the n's out of here, so that'll become n to the 1. And when I clean it all up, don't lose anything behind. I'm going to have a 6 on the top, no more n's. I'm going to have a 25 on the bottom, and there are 2 more n's that will multiply. In question C, you have to factor before you start. So that's going to be r plus 10, r plus 8. In the bottom is just a GCF. So we see that r plus 8 is probably going to cancel. Remember, for the division, you have to flip, okay, when you turn it into a multiplication. So the r plus 6 is going to go up on top. Notice I put it in brackets, right? I think it's important to do that so I don't accidentally try canceling too early. And on the top, I'm going to factor out a 9r from both of them, and actually 9r squared, and that's going to give me r plus 6. And now the cancellations that occur, I can actually just go, okay, r plus 8, r plus 8, r plus 6, r plus 6. You can't do anything with the 9r squared and the r plus 10, so now it's just a matter of assembling the answer in proper format. On the top, I'm left with r plus 10. On the bottom, I'm left with 2 times 9r squared. You're done. Okay, so a couple more minutes here. Jumping to the last page. I did these ones in class for some of the classes. So hopefully this isn't going to be so much of an issue in terms of what you need to know. This is the one where I give you the equation for the dolphin jumping, and you just have to plug in the h. In the first case, h equals 0 to find out when it's out of the water. In the second one, h equals 7 for when I want to find out when it reaches that height of 7, right? And that would be up on the top of that bar, right? 7 meters. Where is it hitting that point? And then the last one with the soccer ball, where you see the equation, same deal. I'm trying to figure out when it reaches 3 meters. So I have to replace in h equals 3 and solve that. So take a good look at that, pause, and you can see it. Hopefully you're going to be ready. I will also be posting solutions for the other review.